Hi everyone, Stjepan here. I'm going to show you my round 7 game from Hvar. So after 2 losses and a draw, which were all bad results, I had a large minus score on the tournament, even though I started well in the tournament. And I was facing a lower rated player again. For those of you who know what it's like to play kids, I'm happy to say, or I was happy at the time, that he wasn't like 10 years old. So maybe his rating is what it should be. In any case, it was a double round day, so I didn't have much time to prepare. My opponent started pawn e4. I played the Caro-Kann and he played f4, which this isn't a good variation because black gets too many squares. The way to try and punish this is to play d5 and after e5 play bishop f5. G4 immediately doesn't work because of bishop e4. So knight f3, e6. Okay, now you can play in a couple of different ways. You can play with c3, d4, or you can play with d4 straight away. Nothing else makes much sense. My opponent chose d4, which is okay. And now the way to punish this is to attack the center straight away with c5. And here there are a couple of variations which are interesting. The main line is bishop e3, which I actually know, and after queen b6 you shouldn't take. You should play knight c3. And the lines get kind of crazy after queen takes and knight b5. This is actually, as you can see, or you cannot see, but it's better for black and you can give up the exchange. I didn't remember all of this during the game, but I would have gone for it anyway because I think I would have remembered the lines. So after c4, if knight c7, you just go king d7 and it's completely winning. You cannot take the rook because, yeah, the engine says -4, but you basically pick up all the pawns and the knight is trapped in the end. So that's a line I vaguely remembered, even though I looked at this like 3 years ago. My opponent played bishop b5, which I've never seen before. It lets me develop for free. And now his next move is definitely a mistake, which makes his position bad. So he needs to be able to reinforce the center or attack my center. So either c3 or c4 are thematic ideas here. The knight usually belongs to d2, unless you play c4 and you can get away with knight c3. My opponent played knight c3 straight away, which means that this center is crumbling, which means that this knight is basically useless. It's attacking nothing. d6 is defended, b5 is occupied, e4 is taken. This knight isn't going anywhere. If it tries to go to a4, well, so what? c5 is defended. So I just went rook c8, threatening a6. And a6 is a pretty serious threat. After castles, which he played, he cannot retreat the bishop really, because I'm just going to play b5. And actually, if he retreats the bishop this way, then I can just win a pawn. I can just do this, and the queen can never take because of bishop c5. So after a6, he needs to give up his bishop. And now I have the bishop pair. There is no bishop on d3, which is usually the piece that starts the attack in the advanced Caro-Kann. So my position is perfectly safe. My center is safe because he cannot play c4. My queen side is safe because he doesn't have queen b3 ideas. My king side is safe because he doesn't have g4. Basically, I'm playing a risk-free game. He played knight e2 and I played h5. The idea is to reinforce the f5 square, maybe occupy the g4 square to, well, grab this bishop as well. If I can have the 2 bishops against 2 knights, even though it's a closed position, it's going to open up and this diagonal is going to be dangerous. So this was the idea. He played c3, which is okay. Knight h6, bishop e3, and now I went in for the bishop straight away. I just went knight g4. He played bishop f2 and I took it. I mean, why not? Now, this diagonal again could be problematic. Maybe I even have queen b6 ideas. But what I wanted to do desperately is make sure that he doesn't occupy d4. This could be his only source of play strategically. So I made a move which I'm not sure I'm happy about, but practically speaking, I think it makes sense. I played bishop g4. The idea is, well, firstly, he cannot take on c5 now. But if he ever does take on c5, I'm going to have control over d4, and best case scenario for him, everything is going to be traded off on d4, and I'll be occupying the c file because my rook is already on c6. He played queen d2, and I just snapped the knight off. Rook takes, now g6. And the idea is, well, my idea was during the game, I want to prepare b5 at some point and play on the queen side. This knight is completely dominated by the bishop. If he ever takes, for example, if he ever takes on c5, then I'm going to take, and if knight d4, I'm going to take it. And again, I have queen c7, king e7, and rook c8, and I'm occupying the c file. But my idea was to actually play c4 at some point and then go for just breaking his position on the queen side. He played a4, which is okay, prevents b5. And now there were two ideas. My first idea was just to take cd4. Again, if cd4, then the knight is even worse, and I have the c file. So if knight d4, then bishop c5, and let's say rook d3. I don't have to take straight away, but let's say queen e7. Once he moves the king, I can take. And if he takes with the pawn, then same story. I can just go queen c7, and I'm not afraid of rook c3 because I have king e7, and I think his position is weaker than mine. But after a4, I didn't want any complications, so I played c4. And I couldn't see any counterplay for him. This knight really has no squares. My bishop is going to sit on e7. Wherever the knight goes, I'm going to snap it off and then slowly prepare b5 and gain more space, eventually weakening the c3 pawn. In my mind, he could never play b3 because c3 is going to be terminally weak. He played a5, which I don't think has much to do with the position because it doesn't prevent b6 or b5. I can just put a piece on b8 and play it anyway. So bishop e7, king h1, queen b8, preparing b5. And once I play b5, he probably has to take en passant, otherwise I play b4, take on c3. And once he takes en passant, I have rook b6, just safely attacking the b2 pawn. He retreated the rook, I played king d7, connecting my rooks, preparing maybe rook c8, maybe b5. And here he blundered. If he doesn't do anything, well, it is very hard to suggest a move, to be honest. If he plays something like h3, then I just go b5, and I don't think he can hold that. But he played b3, which I had calculated beforehand. It simply doesn't work. I can take it, and after rook b1, trying to recapture the pawn, now I have b5. And if it's taken en passant, which he did in the game, then rook b6, and I have an extra pawn and two connected passed pawns on the queen side. Dead lost for white, obviously. And if he takes with the rook, then this is overwhelming. I just have too much pressure. Not to mention that I can do something slow like this, and then bring my queen to d8 and put pressure on a5 as well. So this cannot be held. There is simply no way. If he ever puts a piece on c1, then I can blockade and prepare b4. So he played a b6. I mean, both positions are losing. Maybe this is worse. Rook b6, queen d3, queen b7 defending a6, and rook b2. And in this position, I was afraid of c4. I shouldn't have been afraid of c4. I should have just played rook a8 and continued pushing my pawn. Instead, I played rook c8. And again, I wanted to prevent c4. If I play rook a8 and he plays c4, I can just take and takes. And after a5, d5 really doesn't bring enough counterplay because I can just take. There is no rook d1. But I didn't want to allow any tricks. So I played rook c8. And once the queen went back, not supporting c4 anymore, I just went rook b8. I mean, I don't have to rush. After knight c1, he isn't winning my pawn because he doesn't have time for this. I have queen c6. And now if he ever takes, I win the c3 pawn. If he didn't take on b3, but if he takes on b3, then rook b3, knight b3 forced, queen c3, If he takes on a6, I win the knight, so knight c5 has to be thrown in first. Bishop c5, dc5, queen c5. If rook a6, I can simply go king e7, and this is a clean pawn up with a much better king. I'm occupying both key files. I'm gonna play rook b2. f4 is weak, he can never play g3, and I just push my past d pawn. Once I put my king on g7, I just play d4, d3, d2, and win. So that's not possible. So he played rook ab1, which again is even worse. I just took on c3, and if he takes with the rook, I trade everything off, and in the end I queen my a pawn. He took with the knight, which loses by greater force. Again, if he takes with the rook, then rook b3, knight b3, and just king e8. I just want to bring my king to safety and then push. If knight c5, then rook b1, queen b1, bishop c5. He can try checking me, but eventually I'm going to hide. And once he takes, then it's over. But he took with the knight, and now a simple win, bishop to a3. If he moves the rook away, I win the knight. The only way to sort of save the position is rook c2, but this fails tactically to rook takes b3, and he cannot take my queen. If he takes my queen, then I take on b1, and he loses his queen because he doesn't have rook c1. I can just take it. So after rook b3, he took on b3. I of course took with the queen, and here he resigned. I'm a bishop up, bishop and pawn, and I'm queening my a pawn, and I'm trading queens or mating him, and it's hopeless. So I think this was a clean game. Finally a game I'm happy with. Again, I didn't feel well during the game or anything, but I did manage to win, so that's good. Hope you got something from this one. Maybe gives you some ideas how to punish early f4 in the advanced variation. Again, it's just not a good move. I spoke to my opponent after the game. I mean, discouraging him from playing this anymore. It's just not good. Black is slightly better out of the opening. You cannot have that. You have to play very precisely to gain counterplay. Okay, thanks for watching. I hope you got something, and stay tuned for more chess. Bye bye.